live there. Um, Alrighty, I'll let you know. And oh shoot, I gotta click up all these. Thank you for coming on to Bridges Live and Black Coffee Conversations. I'm Dr. Paul. We're having another mental health panel on women's mental health. And as you see, I got some lovely panel guests that will be introducing ourselves. And I see one more person is about ready to pop on, so that is cool. And oh shoot, I gotta click up all these. Thank you for coming on. Boom, there it is. So, hello.
Hello.
How you doing? Introduce yourself. We're already live, and you're late.
Yes, because I live in the country. Yes, way in the country in Texas, and the weather has not been with us in a nice, lovely way. I'm Sherilyn Fedette. I'm a biofeedback and neurobiofeedback board certified music therapist and specialist. I am also a certified minister and I'm a professional musician. So I have and own my own private music therapy practice, and we're in the hill country of Texas, Central Texas.
That is awesome. I love, when I'm having you lovely women on here, and we're going to talk about women's mental health is really our focus today. And then later this afternoon, I also have people know on Bridges Live, I have my men's mentoring panel. But let's get right into mental health. Like we know in this pandemic time, in this time of stress, that women have to hold down families. But before we get there, I want everyone to introduce themselves to the audience of Live and what you do and how they can get a hold of you in case they're like, hey, I love what Dr. Tracy was talking about. Let me get a hold of Tracy. So go ahead, Ms. Tracy, you're first.
Hi, my name is Captain Tracy Began. I'm a clinical psychologist with the Army. And so quick disclaimer, I'm not representing the Army. Views don't represent official policy. And you can check me out on LinkedIn if you're connected with Dr. Paul. It's a great way to get in touch with me. And thank you so much for having me on the show.
And Dr. Drake, you're next. I got this little pad thing going over to my left to right. So Dr. Drake, you're next.
Hi, I'm Dr. Princess Drake. I'm a mental health practitioner in co-occurring disorders, primarily addiction in Minnesota, and I can be reached out on LinkedIn as well.
And Margot, there she is, she's back. Hi, Margot.
How are you? My name is Margot Abraham, and I work for the Mental Health Association of Rockland. I have a degree in psychology. I work with individuals who are mentally ill, but they are visually and or physically disabled, and I am on LinkedIn.
And last but not least, Sherilyn.
I am Sherilyn Ferrer, and I am a board certified music therapist. I'm currently in process for my doctorate in psychology, and I am also a certified minister, certified music educator. I got a lot of alphabet soup, but you can reach me on LinkedIn or through my website at jesusmusictherapy.com. And we're in Texas.
And you're in Texas, right?
Yes, sir.
So we got a good globe thing coming on here. So I'm going to ask, the question I'm going to ask, and I'm going to ask you all individually the same thing. Women's mental health is not being championed enough. How come? Dr. Tracy, please.
So just like you said, oftentimes women are looked at as the glue that holds the family together, so to speak. So we are the last ones to take care of ourselves because we're so busy taking care of everyone else. So that's just my
and Dr. Drake?
To add on to that, I would also say that specifically for women of color, we're also seen as supposed to be the strength, sometimes the breadwinner, sometimes the comforter, and the provider for children, our spouses, family. And so it takes on this extra burden of, well, I can't take it on myself, so I'll just take care of everyone else.
And Margot?
Beautiful ladies have already answered what you have asked, and to add to that, as being a woman of color and a single parent of 3 girls, you find yourself kind of hiding how you feel and knowing that knowing that you have to put everybody else before you, and that can be quite a challenge and can hinder on sometimes just your own mental well-being.
And Sherilyn, please.
Well, I concur with what everybody has said already, but what I'm also finding through my women empowerment groups is that a lot of women don't have the same village, the community, and network of other strong women who will lift them up and support them, so they feel like they're alone. And when they come to therapy, when they finally find a group where they can fit in, they realize they're not alone, and they're able to slowly begin that support, because in therapy it's very different, the support that you would receive, than a lot of us are able to access in our familial relationships, and that is a large struggle work for a lot of people. So I think a part of what keeps mental health at bay for a lot of women is just thinking that they don't have what is necessary, or they don't feel valued enough to begin with to pursue that for themselves.
You know, one of the things I've noticed, you know, when we talk about, I have this thing, I do mental health Mondays with a Dr. Only and a Dr. Drake, and we go off and we talk about women's things that we need to do specific for women. And then at your different fields and the different areas, when we talk about, is there a short snap that women can see to say, I need mental health? Because I believe everyone needs mental health, even if it's for a checkup. I know before we came live, Dr. Tracy and I, we talked about if you could just get a checkup to say, hey, you know, I am doing good. What's some of those pictures I think women can look at themselves and say, hey, I need to go see someone? Dr. Tracy?
So looking at, how am I sleeping? What's my mood like? Am I snapping at my kids more? Am I socially isolating? Am I not reaching out or connecting with my support group and the people in my life who you know, bring me joy, encourage me, especially in this time of COVID. It you know, we say socially distance, you know, truly it should be physical distance, but we really are socially distancing from each other and losing those connections.
So Margot, I'm going specifically, I want you to talk to single mothers, single Black women who are trying to do so much and don't feel like they have the help, and yet how can I get help? What is some of those things you've noticed?
Well, having that village, that one word, that village to support you. I am in other organizations, and within those organizations it's a sisterhood, but you sometimes find that that village is not necessarily the village that you're looking for.
Hmm.
um, the village I had also was having my grandmother and my mother, and I have an aunt. That village, I have female cousins to just kind of bounce things over, and sometimes that's not the village you're looking for. So I have to say, for myself, being a single parent, I had to find a way, and I did that through um, exercise. I changed a life, and it's not always easy. I took a journey of a healthier lifestyle and formed a village of women that we will exercise together. And we just had this conversation because of the gym, the COVID, and not being able to get to the gym and not being able to have that that bond, because we are habit creatures that need that hug.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you know, having that hug is important. Um, we went to walk around what you know, Paul, is Rockland Lake.
yeah.
And we were just saying to ourselves that there was just two of us saying, we miss the connection. It was four of us that would meet at 24 Fitness, go upstairs at 5:30 in the morning, 5 o'clock actually. We were the only ones in there, and we would have our own routine. Well, because of not having that, it seems that we're losing a connection. We're losing ourselves. And sometimes I find myself getting very agitated. Sometimes I will, you know, I have to say to my daughters, I'm sorry, because I find I can't, I have to catch myself, because that that just getting depressed or feeling angry, like, okay, this can't work this way. So as a single mother, it just, you have to, that support is important. I don't care if it's in two friends, or a group of women that maybe have the same um, something. You never know until you start talking and you realize you're not alone. And
It,
that's
it,
what I've found, that I'm
it's
not
that
alone, I'm not the
it,
only one.
it's that talking. I think we really can focus on. It's that communication. Dr. Drake, I want to ask you this: when women are having tough times, besides outside of family members, there is a tough place for them to open up. And how do they feel like, it's like, who do I find to open up to? That seems to be a question women have, because they don't want to put their business out in the street. They're like, I'm not putting my business out there for them to look at. So how can they really work that out?
I know for me specifically, because I moved to a state where I didn't know anyone, it was vital for me to connect with the women that I worked with. And so I started building bridges, small, so co-workers, and then we started to get together. And then I started to notice that it was even more intentional for me to reach out to people that I knew and say, hey, I need to talk to someone. Because I'm, I'm socially isolated. I don't have a community, and I'm in the midst of building one in COVID, which is really, really difficult. And so I found that social media, things like Zoom, has been essential to not only my personal growth, but my mental health. And we talk a lot about that within my women's circles in terms of what can we do for each other, even if we're at a distance. And so some of us have started sending like care packages, just little things. It doesn't have to be expensive, but just showing that you have someone out there that cares about you.
Sherilyn, we've talked before on another podcast, and we talk about biofeedback and the things that people are receiving and sending. And there's some things they're not understanding their connection they are to themselves and who they are to their community. What are some of those ways that they can start understanding that feedback is something you are actually transmitting?
Oh, goodness. I think first it starts with just the revelation of a difference. We tend to think of ourselves as we're just going through life. We're people, we're doing people things, and this is just a list of responsibilities. And life becomes this list, a checklist of things that we just kind of move through. But we are a mind, we are a physical body, we are a spirit. We are 3 parts, and we have a diet that has to feed or nourish all 3 parts of us. So if we are spending our time and what we are investing in is not edifying us, mind, body, and spirit, then that is a diet of depreciation and malnourishment that we are giving ourselves. And I think it just begins with the revelation of a difference, because if you don't recognize that you have a spirit, and that's not a religious thing or a faith thing, you have a spirit. It is what exists inside of you. It speaks to you in dreams. It works with you. It is partnered with you through this thing called the human experience. And if you ignore it, over time, it will be that thing that ruptures out of you, and it looks like crying jags. It looks like anger outbursts. It looks like depression. It looks like extreme and profound anxiety. It looks like insomnia. It looks like overeating and undereating. It looks like passive aggressive behaviors. And it's just, I haven't found a way for it to be healthy for anyone. So just starting from knowing we have 3 parts, and those 3 parts have to be in balance with themselves and with each other for us to get through life. And this applies to our voluntary physiological responses and our involuntary physiological responses. So we're not just talking about the central nervous system, we're also talking about the auxiliary nervous system and the ability to regulate ourselves in a discipline, a specific and intentional discipline that will then matriculate into changing and causing a change generalized everywhere else in our lives.
Dr. Tracy, when it comes to family, and you're a mother along with your practice, all of what we've been talking about, and women still have to pull the kids, the husband, making sure they're safe. And there's a lot of things being bottled down. And how do they let that steam out with a certain practice? Is there like a certain technique you normally teach your clients, or is there a certain process do you want them to go through? What are some of those things that, because I know when women listen to it, they're like, you know what, I don't got time for none of this. You know what I mean? I just don't have the time, I don't have the space, and I don't have the cash to contact anyone. So hopefully this helps.
Women are fortunate if they can use the bathroom without, someone knocking on the door or taking a shower by themselves, or, just again, that 5 minutes just to yourself. And I think that's something, especially if you're a mother with small children. And again, if you're that single parent, you don't get that. You're constantly on, you're constantly going, and, teaching them to breathe. because oftentimes I just ask them like, where's your breath? Where do you feel your breath? And often we are just, like you said, just we're not feeding that body, mind, spirit. And just taking a breath and teaching people how to breathe and do diaphragmatic breathing can be so helpful. And there's a number of mobile health apps that can help you walk through that are free. A couple that I recommend are the Breathe, Think, Do app. They
Oh,
can utilize it with their kids. It was created with Sesame Street. And again, I'm not getting any kickbacks from here. It's just a helpful app to work with kids. Then there's also the virtual Hope Box, and it has breathing apps on there. It has progressive
Well,
muscle relaxation. So just
hold
something
on,
that
Dr.
they can.
Tracy. I'm going to do a little pushback here. Do you think, as much as I believe it's also helpful, do you also believe that people use it too much as a crutch, and they don't, and then they won't go get the real help they might need? They're like, because you meet them, you're like, you kind of like Margot said, you kind of get angry, like, hey, just use that app, you be good. No, you need to see someone. You're a little bit off the chain.
I think that's a really good distinction to make, right? Because sometimes we look at behavioral health or mental health as the absence of illness,
Right.
and the absence of something being wrong. But when there's something wrong, having those people in your life to put you in check and be like, hey, I'm really concerned about you. You're off as far as what your regular battle rhythm is. I'm really concerned. You've been snapping a lot lately, or, this isn't usually how you are. Are you okay? But again, because we're not always engaging in those social relationships right now, we're not getting that feedback. So I bring it up just as a place to start.
Good.
So if somebody's listening to this panel, to say, okay, where can I start? Because I can't get that 5 minutes, and I have to go to every shift, and I'm running from, a childcare provider to trying to get the groceries to here. So when am I going to even have time for an appointment?
Mhm.
And so I would also encourage people who are like, yes, I need some help. I need some support. There's some really great virtual tele mental health resources that are out there.
Margot, when it comes to people with getting care, when it comes to mental health and women in mental health, what is some of the things that you've been hearing why they waited so long to come?
Finances is one big thing. I know that it might be in every family, but I know that in the African American culture, the Black culture, what happens behind the door stays behind the door.
Right.
Almost as if, well, if I have to go talk to somebody, that must mean I'm crazy. That word crazy. Not understanding, like Dr. Tracy said, the 5 minutes or the breathing, or just recognizing, you know what? Sometimes it's not about always finding that therapist. Just being able to relate to someone else can be your therapy. Like I said, I have a group of women. I started a group of women almost a year ago, next month, on Glide. They have what's called that video Glide.
Okay.
It's 32 of us. And it wasn't about being part of the same organization that linked us together. It was just about lifting while I climb, holding my sister's head so she can have her crown, and let her know it's all right to tilt your crown. But let you know that I know what you might be going through. I might not necessarily be going through the same thing in that same street,
Right.
but
Right.
somewhere along the line, we have knocked doors and turned that same handle. And let me show you what I did for myself. But know that there are individuals out there that will sit and listen. It's not about laying on a couch. There are therapists that look like us that, if you need it, it's there. Don't be ashamed, because I think that word shame is another thing. Being shamed. It's nothing shameful about speaking to somebody, to let them know how you're feeling. And in this field, that's what I've been finding, that it's shameful. And I have to say, my own children came to me and said, "Mommy, I think we need the help." And we went for
I like
that.
that.
And I reached out to friends within my own field to say, "Listen, my daughters are coming to me. You work with children. I need the assistance. Financially, I'll have to figure it out because, as mothers, that's what we do, right? We'll figure it out. That insurance, I'm gonna knock on insurance door. Listen, I need you to help me because my children are asking for that help."
You got to be the
And
champion for yourself and for your children.
absolutely. And I have to say, I found somebody. We found a lovely young Black woman. When she walked out the door, I was like, oh, there is an angel and there is a God. And I have to tell you, because my children can relate to that. They
Hmm.
can, and she's young, enough to say, do you think about what you're saying? You
Right.
know, because mommy, though I'm in the mental health field, I can say it, and then they'll come back and say, well, what happened? She said the same thing you said, mommy, think about it. Oh, okay. But I'm mommy. I'm not
Yeah.
that mental health
Yeah.
worker. I'm mommy. So I have to remove myself and I have to be the mommy. Again, that link of women, having that trust, like you said, trusting someone to be able to tell your business. Can I trust that woman to tell my business too, that it won't be out in the street? So in my group, I say to them, the disclaimer is, this is about uplifting each other. This
Hmm.
is not about taking her business and sharing it with another person. This is about saying, hey, I'm tapping you on your shoulder. Something's going on with you. I need to talk to you. If I don't see you in the group, I'll send you a text.
And say,
Hey,
where you been?
what's going on? Right. What's going on? If you don't want to tell me everything, that's fine. But I just need you to say hello. So we, as a group of women, know that you're okay. And if you need assistance, you tell me. I might not know everybody, and I might not, but I will Google it. I will GPS it, as my daddy would say, GP it, and shoot it to your state. Listen, go to this link right here. You're in Georgia, you're in Texas. Maybe they can help you.
Yeah.
You know,
One of the things you said, it's like some of you know, some of you don't know. Most of the people listen to Bridges Live and listen to me talk. I have 9 kids. I have 7 girls and 2 boys. And in that dynamic, I have 7 grandchildren. And with that now, there are depression, sadness, and some sickness. And being just who I am not, like you said, Margot, I'm not here to fix. I'm here to be dad and be like, one thing we deal well to say is that as long as you express yourself and talk about it, we can find a help. So, Dr. Drake, one of those things is about trust. How can young women learn to trust outside of social media that they need more than just validation from a like or dislike, or because that seems to be holding our young women at bay, is this what is being personified in social media. I mean, that seems to be holding a lot of young sickness also in a bottle cap.
I would totally agree. I know that part of what I do on a day to day is I work with men and women who are at their last leg of desperation,
Mm.
use everything in the world to try to fix themselves, whether that's through drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling. And by the time they get to treatment with us, I don't know what else to do. And so the biggest thing that we talk about is how can you begin to prevent some of the things that you've encountered so that you don't get to this point. But then they backfire and say, well, if I knew that, I wouldn't be here. I'm like, well, absolutely. But as I always tell people, even therapists need therapists. And so one of the things is kind of knocking down the stigma, because I noticed that a lot of times with women specifically, it's, well, I can wait. I'll wait till the kids are out of school. I'll wait. And it's like, no, because that day that you wait may be too late. And so you get to the point where you're having to establish trust, but also build it, but also in value them with trusting the process, that it's not going to happen overnight. Your problems didn't start overnight. They're not going to be resolved overnight. And so how can we start today in trying to fix the problem? And if that means just being able to cry out in the open, because a lot of times we do things in silence or in secret, and then those secrets lead us to being more sick. And so building that trust within ourselves first so that we can trust the process is so vital.
Sherilyn, before I get to you, I want to ask Dr. Tracy something. What is with the crying that people hold back from that you found? I know from my practice in doing emotional sciences and education, people tend to not want to connect to that center because I'm such a neuroscience person. People don't want to connect to that center part of the brain to release it. What is with the crying that people just don't want to cry? What have you found?
I think it goes back to that sense of weakness. If I cry, then I'm weak. And if I'm weak, I can't carry on. So there's this sense a lot that I get from my patients. And that if I let, it's almost like Pandora's box. If I open it up, I don't know if I can get it back in. And if I can't get it back in, then I can't go and take care of everything else that I need to take care of. So I just need to push through this. And I think part of it too goes back to that idea of I'm not valuable. And so taking this time, I don't deserve this time. I need to just keep pushing on. And so going back to that idea of I have to love myself and value myself. And a lot of times, particularly women of color, do not get that message from society that you are valuable, you are worth it, and how to love yourself for who you are. And going back to those likes and that building that trust is if women of color are not getting that message, and the only way they're seeking validation is through that social media, and then they're dealing with everything else. Like the Instapot, right? That's how I try to explain it to people. Like, you have to let that steam out first. If you just open it up, it's going to explode, right? So let's let some of that steam off. And that's emotional energy that is stored in your body, and it is looking for a way out. And if you do not give it a way out, it is going to explode.
And that's why I really want. I have a pattern in my head. So Sherilyn, talk about that energy bottled up, and that's I knew, I just had my feeling Tracy was going to talk about that energy that was not being released, and that vibration that's being held back. And so now I want you to speak on that code process, Sherilyn, about to allow people to understand crying is another signal of vibration. Go ahead, talk about that.
Oh, it is. It absolutely is. If we think about this in terms of just of our physiology and the anatomy, the way that the good Lord constructed us all, we have neurologically what we call the afferent neural pathway exchange, which means it takes 8 pieces of data going in for one humanistic response to come out. So the repetition and redundancy needs to be built in, but this electromagnetic field that flows from us, it's that window of 3 feet surrounding us, where our pheromones are most concentrated, and we engage and interact with others. But in our pheromones, we also have portions and particles of our neurotransmitters. So it's all of that is boiled down inside of us, which releases into 4 different kinds of tears. You have happy tears, you have sad tears, you have tears of grief, and you have tears of anger. And as a society, we do not just for women of color, not just for men of color, but also just straight across the board, we do not give a lot of grace and exhibit a lot of compassion for others' humanness. And there needs to be a reconfiguring of how we think about these things. Being human and being broken somewhere in life. Everybody has had that experience, but allowing that humanness to be with you, that thing we need to go back to normalizing that. It's okay if you fall and skin your knee. It's okay if you do something that hurt you. It's okay that you went through it, but what have you learned from it? And I think if we just change the perspective of the dialogue to include not just the bottom of the coin, not just the top of the coin, but all the sides around and all those little ridges that are in between. If we do that, then we normalize. There are different kinds of tears. And there are people who, when they get angry, they cry. They can't really focus because their cerebral cortex is overwhelmed. So they cry. It's okay. But if you tell someone something is not okay, then what you develop in them is based and born from manipulation. They'll do something else. So if you normalize that for them in front of you, they will begin to be okay with their humanness. And when they're okay with it, they are now empowered to be human in front of somebody else. And so I think it's just the normalizing of tears, but also making sure that people understand there are different kinds and all of them are okay, so long as you recognize that is a bad moment and not a bad life.
I want to talk now. I want to help with the friend that helps the friend, right?
Mm.
Because I was thinking about crying, a person crying, and when someone's crying, and then the friend comes, they can either hurt the problem or help the problem. Like, what are you crying for? What's all that noise going about? You know, sometimes we say that, be like, now we don't validate their emotions, we don't validate their feelings. We're not sitting with them. Now we're trying to tell them. So Margot, I'm going to ask you this: is so how can a friend help that friend? Like you've been talking about the group you started, the sisters, and learning to say, hey, lay your hand on me. And I got you. I may not know what you, but I'm here to be with you. I think that's a lesson that was also never taught. And that's something that really needs to be taught, to how to be a human friend, how to be that energetic friend, how to be that loving friend. Go ahead, Margot.
Um, you said a whole lot over there, Paul. Um, well, one word that I have used because, you know, as far as the women's group and as far as being a mother of 3 girls, my oldest one is 24 now, and there was a moment where she had a breakdown, and she felt as if not only did she not have her dad, but she felt she lost me. And there's a word that I use, justify. I can't justify your feelings. That's not what I'm here for. But what I'm here to do is to listen. So what I said to her was, I can't justify how you're feeling. If this is how you're feeling, then that is your right to feel that way. So now, how do we move forward? So within the women's group that I have, I've had some women that will, for some reason, they call me. I'm part of what's called a social club, which my nickname is Miss Stacks. Don't tell nobody that. So
I'm telling everybody from Spring Valley. So hold on, everybody, you don't know, we all went to the same high school.
Yes.
The crazy part is my wife, Margot, and we all went to the same high school. So it's a little bit of, I'm telling everybody.
I the tiger, right? So they call me Mama Stacks. And it's funny because I guess sometimes, like you said, the spiritual being of a person, I can be with my cousin, who I call sister cousin, who is 5 years older than me, and someone will say, "Oh, is that your mother?" Me, the mother. And I'll say, "The mother?" But I've learned, instead of getting angry, I've learned, I must have this aura, this being of who I am, and I give off this protection. And the group of women I'm with, they'll say, you are the mama of the group. You have a being about you that they might be wrong in whatever they're doing. And I'll let you have it. And I'll let you talk about it. And I'll let you cry. And my also slogan will say is, there is no crying in baseball. And that's just to joke and get them feeling better and just to, just kind of be able to calm down. But say, okay, so now what? Where do we go from here? What is it that I can do for you? How can I assist you in trying to solve what might be going on? What do you want? Which way do you want to go? That again, that I can't justify how you're feeling. This is how you're feeling, and I will support you, because that's what I'm here for. And I think that as I got older, I know, I came more in tune, I guess, with myself, which allowed me to be more in tune with my sister friends, and to be able to be that confidant, that listening ear. Sometimes they'll say, well, I just don't want to talk. Okay, I'll pray for you. Sometimes you can't have people pray for you, but I'm here for you. I'm praying. You're going to be okay. That it's okay to not to be okay.
Right.
That's
Doc-
it.
So, Dr. Tracy, what's another way we can help be that friend that sometimes we just need to be for that person? Because I'm sure you're friends for a lot of people, yes, on the clinical side, but not just, but you're there, and a lot of people want to learn how to be there.
And I think the panel has really hit a lot of this, is learning to hold space, learning to be in that uncomfortable space with emotions that we ourselves might not be comfortable with. And so first, it really does. It starts with us being more in tune with who we are, so that we can also hold that space for other women and other people, and teaching our kids and our young women this, how to hold space, how to be. And it starts by allowing them to express their emotions. It starts by allowing and giving permission to, if you will, and not that we're the granting authority on it, but there's something powerful that happens in a relationship when you give that permission to say, it's okay for you to not be okay. It's okay. And I'm going to hold space for you. Let the ugly cry out. I'm not talking about a couple of the tears. I'm talking the ugly cry, the heaving, the snot, all of it. Just let it out, and I'm okay with it. And we're going to help you wash your face. And when you're done, not even putting a time limit on it. I think that's really an important
This shirt's
skill.
yours now. I'm not. You can have it. Right?
We're good. In the age of COVID, make sure, hazmat suit maybe, but maybe we'll build up some herd immunity by that. I don't know. But truly, it's about holding space and being able to, just like now, laughing at ourselves. We are human, and embracing that humanness, and not trying to be perfect and robotic and have it all figured out. I certainly don't have it all figured out, but man, I'm willing to go with you on this journey to see where it leads.
Dr. Drake, when we talk, I want to go to, it goes back to trust and trauma, and then medication. I think in the time of, I know as a naturopath, I personally want to stay away from medication, but I also know medication has a place for neurotransmitters to connect or to not overload. Well, how do you feel about some Black women? A lot of Black women are like, I ain't taking none of that stuff, and women itself feel like they don't want to take none of that stuff. So let's talk about medication, because I know when we talk about mental health, I think we got to talk about medication, not so much what's good about it or what's bad about it, but maybe it's really a good place for you to start.
One of the things I always tell people is I can't prescribe, so it takes away this need to be able to talk about medications in a different and medical way.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things, and I can't take credit for this, but someone told me, sometimes people need pills and skills. And so you recognize that coping skills are always needed, and you will always need to do prayer, meditation, talking to people, going for that run, reading, writing, sometimes taking a nap, and recognizing that self-care can look different in very many ways. But there are going to be that subset of people who need additional help. And it's a chemical based, not necessarily a personality based thing.
Right.
So telling people, say, hey, it's okay to go and get a consultation. Doesn't mean they're going to give you medication. Doesn't mean you have to take it, but you do have a right to seek out any service that you possibly can, and knowing that it's there. And so one of the other things I talk about when we mention medication is recognizing that it may not necessarily be all, for the rest of your life. Some people have this fear that, if I'm on medication, that means I'm really crazy. And that means I'm probably really worse off than I really am. And it's like, well, no, not necessarily. Some people just need that extra boost to help the coping skills take a hold. And then you talk about it with your provider. And if you need the medication longer, okay. But if not, okay too. I think there's a fear that in some ways that medication is going to change them. And it's like, well, it's going to change you for the better. A lot of times when I talk about, again, with substance use, it's say, what would be the difference between you picking up a pill that would be helpful for you versus you picking up that cup of wine?
Right.
And so then they have to think about it, like, which one's going to be better for my overall health? And so then it kind of takes away this fear about medications in general.
So we're about ready to wrap up, and I want to say I thank everyone for listening. I have this Black Coffee Conversations. I like to say real talk about real issues and women's issues. Women's health is very important. I think our health is very important. It's not so much the COVID and things that's going on. I really think our emotional, mental health is very important, because if we don't take care of ourselves, there is no way we can take care of our families, our workspace, our love space, our children's space. And if we don't understand that we're off balance or just a little bit, we're not we're not clicking like we think we want to. And I think if we remove the want and just go back into being a balanced, compassionate human being, then we understand like, hey, I'm not in a good space I want to be in. So let's touch on trauma. And I know trauma is huge, specifically a lot of people dying, a lot of people we hear that's dying. Death is an issue. People are afraid of what? You can put afraid of dot dot dot, right? Afraid of sending their kids back to school, afraid of going back to work, afraid I can't go see my mother. They're just in fear. So let's talk against that fear that's causing that trauma. Sherilyn, you first, please.
Against the fear causing the trauma. Oh goodness, life is life, good, bad, ugly, and different. And I like to give my clients this analogy. Life, from the time you're born to the time you die, is this vertical line that's going uphill. And we are given this ball, and this ball just gets bigger and bigger the further we go up the hill. And we have two choices, because to get to where we're going, we have to go up the hill. We have to carry the burden. We have to carry the weight. So contented with that journey, or we can be adverse to that journey. And when we are in conflict with ourselves, fighting against the journey that we're going to have to go through, it makes it that much harder, exponentially that much harder. So I with my clients, I encourage them to choose a different perspective, not necessarily a different reality, but a different perspective, a plot twist, a different way of couching what they're going through for themselves. So that way they can enjoy the journey, because there is a beauty in the process, and life is mostly process. And you make progress, which gains you promotions, but throughout life, it's just a process of doing life, and we get better at what we practice. So if we feed those things positive energy, positive affirmations, and positive foundations, then we're able to get to where we're going a little bit more quickly.
And Margot?
Working in the residential program, and I work in the what's they call a congregate care facility, and having to lock down the building basically from society, not allowing any of the residents to be able to go out, not allowing them to, basically the families can't come into the building at this time. They can come out, meet them outside. The weather's nice, so that is a benefit for us. But just the change for them, being able to, now they have groups on Zoom, which has helped. Just finding different ways to deal with that mental stability. I think for some of my residents, it just doesn't make a difference. You just have to find the good, the bad, the difference, the ugliness of it all, and just kind of keep everything calm. For others who are a little bit more higher functioning, just talking and turning the TV off. That's the first thing I had to do, because when COVID started, I swear I was losing it. The staff was just going all over the place. But
you mean, was it binge watching Netflix was just too much?
It was just, I tell you. And also, at one time in my residence program, I had 7 staff that were out due to the COVID, just for different reasons, maybe feeling they were exposed because of other family members, 2 that did test positive. So the protection of protecting everybody in the house, teaching this new norm, wiping everything down, a big sign on the refrigerator. Don't you go in that refrigerator till you wash your hands. Something that I learned when I was a kid, you cannot touch that refrigerator door. And my grandmother would know, if you touched it, you better have washed those hands. So just knowing that, our lives are different, they're changing. And, in some ways, we should have been washing our hands anyway. It's just, there were things that we were already doing but now it's like now you're really thinking about it, you know. So it is what it is what I say to them, and this is the new path, and as we go, hopefully we'll get better. But yes, it's like an uphill path, and we're trying to fit into this new norm of what it might be. So it's difficult.
You know, Margot, I say it a lot. I've been saying it since COVID started, and I started doing some of these Healthy Mind podcasts. And I said it's our new normal. We're not supposed to go backwards. We're not built to go backwards. So I don't, you know, what bothers me the most that I think perpetuates the trauma is that we need to get back to the way the things were. Those words, that phrase is so hurtful because we're not trying to go back to what it was. We have to develop as humans a new pathway. Dr. Tracy, I want to talk about that. Let's go talk about that trauma that you've noticed and how you see it also.
Well, and I think that's a really good point to make. We can't go backwards. We need to go forwards. And as we go forward, we have a choice in what we focus and what we're intentional about. And it's not to dismiss that these are unprecedented times, that there is fear, that there is, you know, the trauma is there, the grief is there, and it's not to dismiss it. It's not to minimize it or pretend it's not there. But we have a choice every day when we wake up. What are our thoughts? What are our intentions? What do we want this day to shape up to be? And so it's really about retraining our minds to say, what am I going to focus on? Am I waking up and saying, what am I grateful for? Thank you for this breath. Thank you that I can move my body. Thank you, I have this home. And that for a lot of folks, they're not able to say those things, right? And so finding for each individual, what is that thing that I am grateful for in the midst of this storm, in the midst of the chaos? What is that silver lining? What is that ray of hope? And I have a guest host that's joining me. Good morning, sweetie. Good morning, sweet boy.
We forgot you're in Hawaii's time, so it's a little bit different.
Yes. You can.
What's different?
A little bit. So I was being a little too loud for my sweet boy. But really being able to focus on, can I find the silver lining? And when I can't, knowing that that's okay. And not being so hard on ourselves to be perfect. You know, there's all these things out there like, you should learn, 5 new skills. And I'm like, good for you. I'm just trying to shower today. Like, I want to put clothes on today. That's my win. Yes, good job. So it's those small things, count them as victories and being able to move forward. What do I need for this next step forward? Instead of trying to plan that 20-year plan, what's it going to be like in 20 years? I'm happy. Like, what's the next step?
Dr. Tracy, your young boy just came on the scene, and it just triggered a thought for me. Going, we're talking about women's health, but women have sons,
Yes.
Women have children, and they're afraid. I mean, they're not letting these young men, young Black men, go out and drive because are they coming home? Are they doing anything? And how do we talk to that? How do we help with that just a little bit before we move on?
Yeah, that's a scary conversation. I have a coworker who his son just finished driver's training and passed his test, right? And now, okay, I have to have the talk. Right? I have to have the talk with my son. What do you do if a police officer pulls you over? What does that look like? And, for me growing up, for my older son, I didn't have to have that talk with him. Right. But looking forward for this guy, we're going to have some conversations. Right. And for me as a white woman, it looks very different than a woman of color having that conversation with her son. And it's a challenging one. It is definitely challenging. And since we've had our 2 kids in care, my perspective has shifted significantly. There's an awareness, but now it's here. It's in my home. It's when we go out places, right? Being aware of not everybody is going to see my son as this amazing, awesome, creative ball of wonderful love and energy. And so that's something that I'm still learning. That's a space I haven't had to be in yet. So I would defer to the panel members who have been there, but it's a real conversation that needs to be had, right? Because you don't know if your son is gonna come back in. You know, my son ran cross country, and one of his best friends is African American and dark skin, and all I kept thinking about with Ahmaud Arbery is I've never had to worry about if Giovanni came back from a run. And I know that my friend Tiffany cannot say the same about her son, especially after recent events came into the media.
Dr. Drake, my daughter in Minnesota, who lives right near where the fires took off, she works at the Walgreens, one of the Walgreens where the fire was, and she thinks about her man and the shooting, and I think about all of it. My wife thinks about me every time I leave the house. It's just something that we think about, and yet we're talking about trauma and women's health is still focusing on a lot of things. And what's that push that we can have to help women deal with that trauma?
I think for me, just living in the midst of Minnesota and recently George Floyd, it's become more and more apparent that I have to be able to think about the hope that I have to instill, not only within myself, but the people that I know. Also, just recognizing the resiliency that so many people of color have. If I would say all of us, because we know what it feels like to have to deal with this. We know the fear that when we leave our door, we may not come back. And as someone who is light skinned specifically, I used to think that I had some type of shield until I was encountered just in Minnesota, just driving down the street, and I was followed by a cop for no apparent reason. And the fear set in, and that realization that it doesn't matter if I'm light skinned, it doesn't matter if I'm dark skinned, I'm still a person of color and I may be seen as a threat. And so I think about all of these things systematically every single day in terms of how can I make sure that I get home to my daughter so that she can still have a mom, so I can still be a woman, so I can still be that person who provides hope for people who may not have hope within themselves. And knowing that trauma can be recovered from, it just may take time. And everyone thinks about this PTSD diagnosis, but you can have trauma and not have a PTSD diagnosis.
That's right.
And so setting that apart and validating someone's experiences, no matter if they're big, small, or what have you, for me has been helpful and hopeful, but it's also exhausting to have to think about strategically, how can I make it home every day? How can I support my peers? How can I support my community that's hurting, that's grieving, and they're angry? And it's okay to be all those things. And then you hear people saying, no, it's okay. We just need to let it go. We need to move forward. It's like,
No.
If we move forward, what's going to change? And if nothing's going to change, then we need to stay where we are. So we need to stay angry. We need to stay vigilant, and we need to keep pushing.
So Sharon Lynn, I want to talk, and you can finish this off with trauma, because trauma is it's a signal, it's a feedback, it's something that we're receiving within our bodies. And I love that genetic code about trauma and how it changes the cell, and how what it does to the genetic code to our bodies, and how it affects our organs and digestive levels and things like that. But let's give some help, because you're a musician by love and passion, and so
Yes.
singing is great, but there's a lot of people who say I can't sing. So
Everybody can sing, they really can. When it comes to trauma, I think the first thing that I like to normalize for my clients is everybody has trauma, and what happened to you wasn't your fault. And you do have the ability to recover from it. What happened to you wasn't your fault, and you do have the ability to overcome it. What happened to you wasn't your fault, and you can go back and say, I am more than an overcomer, I am more than a conqueror. And now you're emboldened with the tools and the skill bag to help someone else move through a similar trauma, even if it's not identical, even if there's only shared nuance. You now are empowered with something that you didn't have before. I like to tell people trauma is normal, but you have to understand that trauma, we are a mind, body, spirit. So what we think about we talk about. What we talk about, our body hears, and most people limit hearing to the ears. Our skin is the largest organ that we have, and it's filled with holes. And so every time we say something, our skin listens, our body listens. So if you start complaining about something, you'll notice over time, the joints that you complain about ache a little bit more. They're more prevalent to you. The back that was hurting you talk about it more, it's more prevalent to you. The trauma that was, if you never talk about it, it grows because you think about it. So wash, rinse, repeat. We got to cycle those things out.
Hey, Sherilyn, I had
Normal,
told,
absolutely normal, but we have to
I had
cycle
told
out.
some clients, Sherilyn, I had told some clients that said, you know, if you talk about your achy joints, they're gonna get pissed off and they're gonna ache more. And I said, and they're like,
Yes,
Dr.
they
Paul, what are you
do.
talking about? And I had one of my clients turn around, and I'm not gonna use his name, but Bob. I said, so turn around, and I say, Bob is a punk. Bob is weak. Bob is always pissing me off. I said, how are you feeling? He goes, that doesn't make me all feel all that cool, man. I said, what do you think your joints are doing?
We feel it. We definitely feel it. And when we normalize trauma, there we will normalize healing. They are synonymous because you don't get the blessing without the burden. You don't get the good without the bad. You don't get the overcome without the going through. When we normalize trauma, we will normalize healing. When we normalize the need to talk to someone independent of ourselves, and we normalize and we work against the stigma of what is therapy. A lot of people think, well, I'm not going to therapy because nobody's going to tell me how to live my life.
Mm.
A therapist is an objective window, a reflection, a mirror that shows you back what you are presenting and then provides you with ways to guide your thinking, the systems that you think, that you understand, and even how you speak. Those systems, once they are tested, tried, and true, they will be the best version of you that you are able to put forth in the world, not just for yourself, but for others. So when we normalize the human experience and we stop pretending everybody's got it all together, and we as therapists get off the high horse that says, I'm good enough to help you, but I'm not good enough to get help myself. Every therapist needs a therapy. And for therapists who won't go to therapy, they then impact and sometimes re-traumatize clients because they won't seek help
Mm.
for their own issue and concern. And then they project that onto someone else. So when we normalize, it's a human experience, we're all having it, but we're all also spirits going through this human condition. So when we feed ourselves mind, body, spirit imbalance, and we allow ourselves the same compassion, kindness, and grace we want to show to others, and we allow ourselves to own it for ourselves first, we will find that that vessel that we are pouring out of is continually refilled because it is something we own to give away, and it's not something we had to borrow or steal to then loan to someone else.
I'd like to thank everyone for joining me on Black Coffee Conversation, Real Talk About Real Issues, and then on my podcast channel, Bridges Live. For those of the people who want to contact me, they can always contact me at drpaulholisticscience.com. And I'd like to thank all my lovely panelists for coming on. And again, next month, I'd like to do this. So I hope you view yourself this today as helping your community. As you pointed out, Dr. Drake, is something that, because this is all what I want to do anyway. I want it to be so talked about that it becomes a conversation that we just have, because our mental health is so, I believe our mental health is so important. The trauma that we are healing is so important. So any last words from anyone, Margot, before we take off?
Thank you for inviting me, and you are a beautiful bunch of queens and my king friend here. You know, it's always a learning lesson. It's always a teaching moment, and you learn from individuals of what their expertise might be and what their not solutions, but something that I can bring back to the table to help with trauma from somebody else, or just help with anybody that I might be dealing with, and to make suggestions. So thank you.
And Sherilyn?
Oh, it has been a pleasure and an honor, and I am floored by the expertise and wisdom that I've been blessed to be on the receiving end with you all today. I'm just absolutely honored, and thank you all for allowing me to be included. Yeah, it's such a blessing. I'm a little overwhelmed. It's been so great, but it has been really, truly inspiring in so many different ways. So thank you all.
Thank you. Dr. Drake, please. And your Princess Drake is just absolutely beautiful. So I don't know how you outlive that name. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you walk through life going, I'm a Princess Drake. So
I use it in any advantage I can to help patients. If it helps, it helps. I just want to thank you all for allowing me. It's a very humbling experience to be able to advocate and also just be a voice of reason in this world right now where everything feels like it's chaotic and there's no hope to be found. The one thing I would just say, just to add on to what Margot and Sherilyn said, is it has to start with us. And I will stop by saying it starts with me. And so when we can start with us, then it feels a whole lot better. It feels a whole lot more achievable, and we know that we can do it.
And Dr. Tracy, thank you for coming on this day of late. I actually forgot the time difference right now. It's early, very early morning for you. So
Yes.
I believe what, 6? It's 6. Are you at 6 a.m.?
Yes, I believe it is. Yep. Oh no.
Yep.
6 a.m. So.
Yeah. So you've been up since 4:30 and coming on and being with. So thank you so much for coming on. What would you like to say to us?
Oh, it's been a pleasure. And thank you so much, ladies. What an honor and a privilege to be a part of this panel. So thank you, Dr. Dyer, for putting this together. And just want to remind everybody, breathe. Take that deep breath, breathe it in, and go forward with your day. And just, blessings to everybody who's listening and looking forward to hearing more of the conversations and following future panelists. So thank you again for the invitation.
Absolutely. I'd like to close off with prayer. So please, everyone, bow your heads. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for bringing us all together. Thank you for allowing us, our words to be heard. Let it ring out so we can start the healing process. Let us all shine in the light of Jesus Christ's name. Amen. Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you, Dr. Dyer.
God bless. Bye-bye.
God bless you all.